Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take you to an immediate question. Take a look at this web page and think of it in the context of what we're going to be teaching today. But for now, just look at this web page. It is from one of the largest banks in the world. It's a case study that you've never seen here before. And I'd like you to see that there is 4 questions. This is sort of a checking selector tool, a configurator, if you please, and then a suggested package with a secondary sort of choice in case you didn't like the first. And then you can select accounts and begin pre-registration. You can also go back and change your answers or manually browse other checking options. Now, somebody put a lot of work into this funnel, into these pages. Somebody worked very hard to think through the process. They clearly had a fundamental rationale, a logic for how this worked. You come in, you answer some questions, you get a recommendation, and then you have a chance to, let's say, change your choices or options, etc. Take a look and answer this question, please. If you were in charge of improving conversion, what is the biggest change you would make, let's say, to these 2 pages, but you can specify a page if you'd like. So let's get your answers. I see old friends coming in. There's Shannon and Elad and Dave, and you can see them into the chat features. Luke is back, and I don't know, Bob McKenzie, if we have, I know you've probably been on here before, but I don't recognize your name. And of course, there's obviously more people on here than I could possibly keep up with, but not that many in my tiny little celebrity world of 50. But anyway, Suleiman, I think, is here, and it's good to see him back. I'm looking for your answers. Oh, finally settled. Graham, good to have you here. Good to have you here. All right, so somebody else. Very quickly. In fact, really good to have you. I hope you got the whole thing sorted out with your book, and I appreciate your kindness and your patience. Randy, Sean, I see familiar names. What would you do? All right. How would you improve the pages I'm showing on the screen? Cliff, let's go full screen. What would you do to improve conversion there? The images don't serve any purpose. This is Suleiman. Thank you. Suleiman, where are you logging in from? Let us know if, I don't know if you're in the U.S. or otherwise, but let us know. It'd be interesting. All right. And somebody else. All right. Clear call to action. Someone said bigger headline. I assume they mean bigger font. Thank you, Sean. Somebody else. What would you do to improve conversion on this page? Now, you're going to see me looking left quite a bit because I'm looking at the pages there. I'm looking at the cameras there. I'm looking at my presentation on a massive monitor behind the cameras, and then I'm looking at chats on another monitor here. So I don't know how to bring them any closer together. But in the meantime, Istanbul, I thought you might be in Turkey. It's wonderful to have you here. And we appreciate you logging in. Probably an inconvenience from a time standpoint. Less copy, says Nick Burns. All right. I want you to think about your answers because we're going to be exploring things today that are new. And I will get more into that in just a moment, but I'm going to actually hit the back button and take you to the title. The goal here is to discover what's in the mind of the customer, what they want to see when they're moving toward their next click. So there are 3 critical skills you have to master. And if you master those skills, and if you can learn what they expect to see, then you can make certain there's no disconnect between their expectation and their experience. And if you can minimize that disconnect, you can drive enormous value. You can improve conversion and thus revenue. With that in mind, let's go forward again. And I want to introduce you to an interesting character. Does anybody know who this might be? I've given you a big hint. You say, how is that a hint? Well, when you put his picture next to the other picture, it starts to become more apparent. Dave Fogel said, did he go over the falls in a barrel? Good question, Dave. No, but it's a good guess. I've heard of that character. In fact, this guy's interesting. Mark Twain, or the real name Samuel Clemens, was alive during his day and called him an ass. The New York Times argued that what he was doing was absolutely irresponsible, and others blacklisted him for what he did. This man was 5'5" tall. He was 140 pounds. And he did things that no other human being had ever done in history. And the world couldn't even believe it after they saw it. One man saw his performance and said, I hope I never have to watch anything like that again. And yet, when it came time for him to perform here in the U.S., he's originally from France. I believe he was from France. But when he came over to the U.S. and performed, there was no place to sit, stand. The banks of that gorge on the U.S. and the Canadian side were packed with tens of thousands of people. Some say 25,000 people came to see this performance. Who is he? What did he do? Well, I'll give you some hint. His real name is Jean-Francois Gravelet, if I've pronounced it properly. And I'm going to be in France teaching in January, it looks like. And so look at this 4 pictures and see if you recognize who he might be. Someone said Evel Knievel. Great guess, Elad. But 100 years too later, I would say. Evel Knievel's an interesting character, too. I was alive watching some of his amazing stunts on a motorcycle. But no, this guy had another name, Charles Blondin, as you can see at the top of the page. Blondin, that was the name that he became associated with here on the stage. Blondin is crossing Niagara Falls. He's doing it on a tightrope. But he's doing more than that. And I have in front of me an article from the Smithsonian Institute that talks about his remarkable career. He was born in 1824. And he carried this beam sometimes across. It was obviously a balancing pole. It was 26 feet long. It was 50 pounds. And with it, he did one feat after another that amazed audiences. Now, you might be wondering, what does Blondin have to do with the bank's website? And I'm going to say everything. And you're going to wonder, I suppose, how could that possibly be? But I'm not using a gimmick to get your attention. I actually believe there's something to be learned here that's rich and that can be provided for all of us today in such a way as we can improve results. You need to know what the customer expects to see. I have not read this in person, but I was told that Bezos once said, this is in the early days of Amazon, that if he could do exactly what he wanted to do, when you came to his website, there would only be one book. And you'd come in, and that book would appear in front of you, and it would be exactly the book that you want to purchase next. Fascinating concept. And it connects to this tightrope walker. And it connects to what we're going to learn today, 3 critical skills. All right? So, somebody said, Sean, building suspense? Precisely. Now, what's interesting to me, the article, by the way, you can find this, I'm sure, online. It's called The Daredevil of Niagara Falls. And I'll just say this. He crossed the first time to the shock and horror of many people in his day. But before it was all done, he crossed that tightrope over 300 times. He walked over 10,000 miles on tightropes. But that's not what fascinates me the most. Take a close look at the picture, and let's talk about it for a moment. In that first picture, he's walking across. But in the, let's go to the third over. In the third over, his manager is on his back, and he is carrying him across. Now, that is a manager who has faith in his celebrity talent, the person he represents. His manager is on his back being carried across the gorge. That's interesting, but still not as interesting as the second photo. Because in reality, he made crossing that tightrope a shocking opportunity to see 1 feat after another, 1 feat topping the last feat, just remarkable results. What you see here is the man who carried a stove on his back. There are some images of this. You can see it in 2, and you can see it in the 4th picture. Now, there's no net underneath them. There's no safety whatsoever. There's no gimmick here. He's walking across with a stove on his back. He hauls the stove off his back. He sets it and balances it on the tightrope, and he cooks an omelet. I read, and I don't have this in the Smithsonian article, but I read perhaps a month ago that he actually carried his manager out at one point and served him breakfast on the tightrope. Now, the manager didn't sit on the tightrope, I can tell you, but somehow he performed all of this. Why does that connect to you and I? How is that important to what we want to learn today? Well, I want to make 3 quick observations. From those observations, I want to go back to the case study. I want to apply the observations to the case study and start to learn together how to predict where someone is going next and what they want to see. So let's begin. No, I'll just comment on Dave about the scaffolding. The rope was so light that crossed the gorge, they were afraid that it would break. And indeed, there was such high winds that the only way, in fact, the first time I think he tried to cross, he couldn't because of the weather. So they went out and they tied ropes from the main rope to keep it from swinging in the wind off to the sides. He did it. In fact, he rappelled 200 feet down a cliff to secure it on the Canadian side. I want to come back to the story. I want to pick up this remarkable article that I have in front of me. I want to suggest to you 3 observations. Here's the first. In fact, all 3 are on this slide. We'll talk about them. Don't focus on the omelet. Focus on the destination. You may be thinking, what are you saying? Oh, it's going to apply in just a moment. Don't focus on the omelet, focus on the destination. And you'll notice that our studio, Cliff, is pulling up prioritization. We'll talk about that. Don't watch, become. And number 3, we know where he started, so we know where he is going. All 3 of these will tie in, and this second piece is identification, this third piece is deduction. And then I go to the closing piece of this article and then share with you, while you look at that, just a couple of other points. Number 1, he actually crossed it in shackles. Number 2, and by the way, at one point he was crossing and the chair he sat fell. He almost went over. He recovered and the chair fell into the water below. But ultimately, Blondin died of old age. I think it's sugar diabetes problem. He was 72, almost 73 years of age. He never went off that rope. He never died. He was amazing. When, and this goes back to point 2, when he started to take his manager across, I want to read to you precisely, word for word, what he said, because it connects to what we're going to do to solve problems today. He said, "Look up, Harry." The man's name was Harry Colcard. "You are no longer Colcard. You are Blondin. Until I clear this place," hear this now, "be a part of me, mind, body, and soul. If I sway, sway with me. Do not attempt to do any balancing yourself. If you do, we will both go to our death." Now, I'm sharing that with you because ultimately that's the best way to illustrate the essence of the second point. Don't watch, become. Now, I want to stop there for just a moment. I think it might be helpful even just to use point 2 to illustrate everything else that's coming. Because today, while I'm speaking to you all over the world, marketers are watching. They're watching customers. They're watching through their Google Analytics program or their Test and Target, Adobe, whatever their package is. They're watching, but they're not becoming. More importantly, they're not getting the result they want because they're focused on the omelet or the chair. They're focused on the shackles. They're focused on the furnace, the table. They don't know what to focus on because there's so many things happening at once that are difficult to comprehend. Things are moving so fast that they don't know what they should focus on. And thus, they can't prioritize. We're in a sea of data. We are talking about big data, but we're not even using our small data right. What can we do? How can we keep from falling into this trap? Well, the most encouraging part comes to the third observation from Blondin. We may not know what kind of omelet he wants next, but we know where he's going very clearly, because we saw clues in the behavioral traces that you and I call data. We know where he started. And from that reason, and from that, we can deduce things. In fact, there's 3 questions we can answer. We'll come to those as everything unfolds. This is Blondin, and now this is a big national bank. And I want to discuss this big national bank and its challenge. What do they want to do? Well, what most big national banks want to do, especially after 2008, the strongest banks were those who were diversified with many, many checking accounts. They were the so-called winners of 2008. They want to increase the number of sign-ups for new checking accounts. So they have a series of signal sets. We call them web pages. The signal set is designed to cue something up in the brain and hopefully stimulate a purchase, a new bank account, a recurring revenue stream. Bear in mind, by the way, for all of you that are on here, banks look at what cell phone companies do. Cell phone companies look at what banks do. Banks look at what newspapers do. A banking account is just a subscription. And don't be fooled by all the fancy language. It's a recurring revenue stream. And this bank wanted more. So, what would you do? What could you do? What did we do? Well, let's think about that for a second. Because we're looking at the control, and let's make some observations. For this test, the customer, for both the control and the treatments, have arrived at the home page of this bank and clicked on the Open in Minutes link. All right? You need to understand that. Why is that important? Well, let's go back to the third point that we just got from Blondin. Where did they start? So now I'm going to put 3 pieces together. And we're not going to use them in order because you don't use them in order. So I'm going to, and to some extent you can, but in others you can't. So I'm just going to take the first piece in front of me. What was the first key word that flashed up on the screen? Does anyone remember? First key word. I said don't focus on the omelet. Focus on the destination. Now, this is about prioritization. This is about prioritization of attention. We need to understand that principle and use it. We got another one. In the second one, what did we say from observing Blondin? We said, don't watch, become. This is about identification, and I don't mean identifying the customer. I mean identifying with the customer. I'm not going to keep spelling the word out. The third, so this is occasion 2, and I'm going to move on to the next word, which is deduction. All right, in case people come in later, we'll go ahead and write that word out real clear for them. Identification. Now, these 3 keys were how we solved the problem for this bank. And solve it we did. You know, they have every resource you can imagine. They have agencies and experts and high-paid people coming in to do marketing. And they had done their best to maximize this. And these people were smart. But something kept them from seeing what was wrong with their original approach. Let's go back and forth. And let's try to solve for this. And let's look at what we see. So we know they've clicked on a certain link, Open in Minutes. Now that link tells you something about what's in their mind. And from that, we connect forward to what is their expectation. What we're doing is we're deducing. That is, we're using that amazing, powerful human skill of inference. We're inferring from A to B. And you might underestimate the power of that, but that's what's kept us alive. That's how we put rockets on the moon. That's how we solved huge problems. That's how we developed vaccines, penicillin, and many other things. Very, very few of these came through induction. They came through deduction. They came through our ability to infer from one set of facts further into the future or a more complete picture. There's more to it than that. You should read Kuhn on scientific revolutions, and you should go back to Karl Popper, philosopher of science. But I want to point out that to solve this problem, we're going to have to infer something. We're going to have to use our minds to and draw implications. Now, so that's going to be one of the keys here. But to do that, you can't watch. Listen to me, marketer. The number one mistake right now keeping you from seeing and understanding what's going on in the mind of your customer is the fact that we watch or look historically at what they've done. You do not watch, you become. The key to driving remarkable results is to get into the skin of that other person. The key to all forms of communication, intimacy, and understanding is to cross the aisle. It's to get out of yourself and into the other, as some philosophers have called it. So I am thinking about deduction. I'm thinking about identification. I'm also thinking about prioritization. There's all kinds of data for that page. There's a data silo. What really matters? How can I prioritize my attention? Well, I dare say the first thing to do is to prioritize your attention by focusing on all data surrounding where they came from. Now, we're going to talk more about that. There's 3 questions you need to ask yourself, and I'm going to show you that in a second case study. But for now, keep those 3 principles in mind, and let's look at the control again. So this is the configurator, the selector tool they call it. This is the suggested package as a result of the selector tool. This is the sort of call to action, and this is how it all comes together. You saw this earlier. Now, here's a treatment. And treatment 1 is 3 product tab. These are the 3 core products: checking, student banking, checking with savings. Now, how many of you find those 3 titles clear and helpful? Tell me, do you think that's clear, reasonably clear? Oh, reasonably helpful? I want to hear your honest thoughts. So use the chat feature and give me your feedback, okay? Ko says no. If I pronounced your, I don't know if it's Chow or Ko. All right, Doug Weeks says yes. All right, interesting. Well, to get a conversion for all of you out there right now that may sometimes feel intimidated by what you don't know, all you need to do is know a little more than you did before to see a lift. Knowing is a matter of relevance, and it's something we can talk about later. But for now, let me show you further. So there are the 3 product tab is. And then I want to show you treatment 2. Treatment 2, and by the way, we've obviously blurred out the brand. Open an account in minutes didn't look exactly like that. We covered up anything connected to the brand, but basically it looked like that. And we had to anonymize the case study in order to protect the bank. So look, by the way, the reason is they don't want their competitors to figure out what happened here. Open an account in minutes. And so this is a different approach. And David Carrier says, I like this one. I'll bet you David's instincts are right. I can make that bet because I know the outcome. And I'm going to now take that treatment, and I want you to understand what's going on here and some of the logic, okay? So in this treatment, we knew that they clicked on a link. Somebody tell me, what did the link say? You recall the link that they clicked on in the original picture? From that, we prioritized our understanding around that. Why did they click on that? Where did they come from? What were they? All those questions. And then we became the customer. We did not watch the customer. We thought, if this is me, if I'm the customer, what am I expecting to see next? More importantly, what am I wanting to see next? So I click on the link, and I see something that says, and do you recall the link? Somebody said, open in minutes. That's correct. That's the link. And what does this say here? Open an account in minutes. Parallelism is a critical key to clarity. But take a look, and then there's a single call to action at the top and one at the bottom, and not much in the way. We don't ask you to do all that configurator work. We don't tell you you have a secondary choice. That all looks so good on paper, but how many of you have seen in the world that you can put something beautiful on paper that doesn't work in real life? I bet this was compelling when they presented it to management. That is the original control. But what it did, although it seemed like it was creating optionality, what it did was create confusion. It didn't stage properly. It didn't sequence properly. It didn't layer properly. And it made something dead simple more difficult. So now take a look again. What you're going to see is the control, treatment 1, treatment 2. And what's happening is prioritization, identification, and deduction. Marketers, you need to build that deduction capability, but you need to ground it in identification. And there's a secret skill, the most important skill that every marketer must develop. And that is the skill, and you could call it a skill. I don't know if there's a good English word to categorize it properly. All I know is it's essential, and that is empathy. Empathy allows you to feel. Now, there's a big difference between empathy and sympathy. Huge difference. We could spend a lot of time talking about that. You don't need sympathy for the customer. You need empathy with the customer. You need to feel what the customer's feeling. When that happens, when you've identified with them, then you're able to deduce something. That is, for instance, what would I want to see next? If I'm the customer, what's in my mind? What do I desire when I trade my click, my attention for your next page? Now, with that in mind, here's the results. Study them carefully. There's probably a slide that makes it a little bit easier to see. So I think I'm going to go to that slide. Treatment 1, I think, is confusing, but it's not as confusing as the control. Treatment 1 isn't as fancy as the control. Treatment 1 doesn't have the design elements. Look, it doesn't have the big glorious picture of an unknown person, probably with a smile. Probably one of the stupidest thing I see on the internet is a smiling face that has nothing to do with what you're trying to communicate. But there it is. Treatment 1 doesn't have that design. It doesn't have even the development lift. It's not falling, it's not dependent on configurators. It's not waiting for you to make choices. That all sounds good when you're having a conversation at the table with your peers. Look at all the cool things we're doing. But all it does is get in the way. Treatment 1 itself is a 60% improvement, 59%. But look at treatment 2, even better. So what happened here? What really happened? What happened is we enabled people to see what they were expecting. We got out of their way and they went forward. Some of the most perplexing times in my career working with the psychology of messaging are those times when I made a way better page. Now listen to this. I could show you example after example. We made a better page and conversion went down. But we made a better page because we added value where they didn't need value. We didn't understand where they were already out of their mind in the sequence of thought. So we gave them a great page that was much improved over the other page, but I didn't get a conversion lift until I just reduced the page, dropped it, got out of the way, and saw for the first time what it was like to be them, what they wanted, what they desired, what they were hungry for, and then gave it to them. Now, I share all of that with you because we need to learn prioritization, identification, and deduction today. And as we learn that, we can apply it to process after process and improve our results. All right. Is this making sense? Are you following the logic? Because I want to take you to another case study and put you to work. All right. This is an example from one of our students. It's a B2C company running multi-channel marketing campaigns. They've got to drive traffic from physical mail campaigns to the site. Now, this is very important. Which homepage will produce the greatest lead capture rate? Once again, we had to work through that question. And I want to start by just showing you the control. Specializing in residential replacement of windows and doors. All right. Now, what is specializing in? Tell me, let's just start with that headline. You can improve it, of course, but we've learned that before I go on to improving the page, let's just beat the headline by thinking about prioritization, identification, deduction. Now, in this case, the energy should be focused and the data should be focused on the first 3 words of the headline because that's your chance to hook them into the deeper meaning of what's going on the page. So what's the problem with the word specializing? Tell me about that. David, you're right. We're coming right to what you just said. We'll get there in a second. But let's suppose that word was the right word in terms of what it's trying to say. What's wrong with the design of the word? What's wrong with the word itself? It's unclear. Yes, Onzis. it's unclear, it's vague. Those kinds of words with INGs starting a sentence and are difficult to process, specializing in. Well, let's stop a second. I know what the company's trying to say. They're trying to say we specialize in residential replacement of windows and doors. We are specialists, and I think they want you to conclude, well, you must be better at it. You might even be cheaper because you're sort of focused. But we're not communicating that benefit. Instead, we're talking about ourselves. We're not showing how that headline, it's not showing how we can make things easier and better for you. It's almost a brag. We're specializing. And this is who we are. And it starts, as David Carrier said, with me instead of what you can get from us. Now, you may tell me later why you can get this, and you might say, and I'm just making up these number of years, but for 20 years we've been specializing in this and this. All we do are this and this. That's powerful. But that isn't important until it connects to why it's a benefit for me. So start with why it's better for me, and then use that as an evidential. You follow? So prioritization happens. And again, identification. If I'm a customer and I come in, I look at that headline, it's like specializing in residential. I don't know what you're trying to say to me yet. Too much work to figure it out. I'm bored already. If you can't get me in the first 3 words, you're not getting it right. You've only got a second to capture my attention. And you've got 4 to 7 seconds to build on that opportunity. And if you squander it, it's too late. So there's mistakes being made here. We could work on deduction, but let's just keep going. So it gets more interesting. And the reason it gets more interesting is because we're going to apply some principles. I'm going to back up. You want to learn how to cash in what I'm saying. Let's think about deduction and 3 questions that you should ask that will help you to deduce, that will help you to infer. The first question is, where do they come from? I'm going to take it in different order. In fact, let's go backwards. This builds from the bottom. Who is this person? Who is this customer? Where did they come from when they got here? What did they click on? What prompted their action and activity? What was the context of that click? And then with that, you can deduce something. So what do they expect? What are they expecting to see on the next click? I said at the beginning of this, we want to help you understand what people need to see, what they want to see on the next click. And I've said that there are 3 skills. There they are: prioritization, identification, deduction. Now, let's go backwards and let's use those 3 questions. Who is the customer? Where do they come from? Well, let's see a little bit more about that by backing up. So this is the landing page, but where do they come from? Well, guess what? A lot of these people aren't coming from a search engine. They're coming from this direct response piece. And you can see the direct response. Summer is Calgary's busiest season for window replacement. Book your installation. By the way, it's not a great direct response piece either. Big deal that it's the busiest season. That just makes you happy. What you're saying to me is, oh, you're probably going to charge more because there's high demand. Who cares? If I have a broken window, I care. Or a problem with my window or my door. But I don't care that it's the busiest season. You care because that's the business you're in. So get the hell out of my way and give me something I need. Sorry. Now, let's look back a second, all right? Book your installation before summer. Oh, well, that's a little bit better. I stand corrected. You marketer slapped me down. It's not a strong headline, but at least they justified the top statement. But they got it wrong. They should have put the second headline, the subheadline, above the top one and made the summer is Calgary smaller, because the essence of this is you better book now before it's too late. So they're trying to build urgency. It's not the strongest way to do it, but there's some logic to what they're saying. Nevertheless, what we need to understand here is we already know that there's a free upgrade. We already know that summer is that they responded to this direct response piece. So when they land here, now we can start to play the game we've been learning today. So based on prioritizing our attention and energy, Cliff, go ahead. And I know I'm going to the board, but they've seen it. Go ahead and keep that up. Yeah. Based on prioritization, we start to identify with what if I'm a customer and what can I deduce from that? So if I'm the person, if I'm the prospective customer and I respond to that direct mail piece, there is something I expect. You created the expectation, and that expectation is a void, and that void is what powered my traverse across the gap from where I am to where you want me to be. An expectation that aligns with a need inside of me, and that's what motivated me to click. And so I click, which is just like me stepping. Boom. Now I've stepped. Am I seeing what I want to see? Well, no, you're not. And therein lies a problem. So you've told me about urgency. You've told me about a free upgrade. I come to a site and it tells me more about yourself, specializing in residential replacements of windows and doors. Well, wait a second. Where's the urgency? Like, how does that connect to what I just saw? I already know you do windows and doors. Tell me something new. Give me something that extends, takes the old piece and connects it to the new piece. Like, tell me how to get my upgrade right now in less than 2 minutes. Tell me how I can take advantage of what you said to me in the direct response piece. So David carries on here, and David is sending direct. David, can you tell us how many direct response pieces you send typically in a month? If it's okay to say that. Because I know David actually does this to drive people to his site, Carrier Law. So David sends 65,000 direct response pieces. He's had a lot of experience, and he spent a lot of time with Kennedy before his death and learned a lot from him also. But Dave's been doing this 30 years. So David, you tell us, take a moment, I'll come back to what you say. What do you see as the biggest problem moving from this direct response piece to the landing page? Yeah, Dave Vogel says, oh my God, Dave, 65,000. Yeah, David's serious. David's built the biggest practice in his state, in his specialty, and attorneys all over the country are trying to copy him and figure out how he does it. You want to learn something, you should talk to him. Go to his website too, but don't count on it. I know he's redoing the entire thing, but he's always upgrading and improving. So there's no continuity. That's right, David says. There's no continuity between the direct response piece and the page they land on. Why is that important? Well, you've heard me teach about continuity, and I think when I first talked about it, it seemed interesting. But today we know there should be some connection. But what we really don't understand is A, how to prioritize our attention on the right pieces, and we're overwhelmed. How to identify and become instead of watch, because that goes way beyond the things we're talking now. It'll unlock all sorts of hidden opportunity in your funnel. And then deduction, using the power of inference to get further from where they are in their mind now to where they want to be. I want to help you see that by taking you to the next piece. So, what do we do to apply these further? Well, we ask these 3 questions. Who is the customer? So they're Canadian consumers. And by the way, this is not nearly detailed enough. Understand that. But they likely own or lease, that's important, residential homes, and have windows to replace or to upgrade in prep for the cold season. I think that is almost useless information, that who is the customer. We need to know way more than that. The more we know, the more we can identify, the more we can deduce. So it's okay that it's there. It's a step in the right direction. I'm using it because this is what was there in the case study. But when I look at it, it's disappointing. It's like somebody filled that out with the obvious. They deduced backwards. Tell me something much more interesting. What zip codes are they in? Is there something interesting in their decision process? Is there, in this day and age, you'll get in trouble doing this, but I'll do it anyway. Is there some cultural component? And what about, income levels? And what about, there's all these other pieces. And for instance, is it more often people with residential homes or more often people with homes that are for rent? And does that matter to them? And do they put a cheaper window in when it's a rental home than when it's a residential home? All these things we should be knowing about who's the customer. But what we can really see easily is where do they come from? And it's very obvious they're coming from this direct mail piece. And then, of course, what do they expect? So now, look at the treatment. And by the way, I want to encourage you. We didn't build this treatment. And this work wasn't done by us. This was done by one of our students who took what you're learning, applied it in their situation, and built this new page. Now, can everybody see how this piece connects with what they expected previously? Everybody's still talking to David about his 60. David, you've stolen my attention. No, I'm kidding. I'm glad. David does some cool things. But take a look here. Book your installation before summer and get 3 free upgrades. Do you see how that connects tightly to the expectation created earlier? Now, if that's the case, will it have a difference? Will it make a difference for the person coming to this page? Well, that's something we can answer scientifically. And here's the answer. 104% increase. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that we don't have to change sometimes a lot of the design elements. We have to make certain that what they are expecting in their mind is being met on that click. But we can't do that if we can't deduce sort of backwards from their identity and from their actions where they may be going next. Now let's go back to Blondin. I didn't need to know, the average marketer, I'll talk about something we spoke about earlier. The average marketer is focused on the wrong things. I'm telling you, I'm gonna share something personally with you, but I got to disguise the identity because it just happened the last 3 days. I had a big conference call yesterday with a $50 billion company's leadership team. I know their team. I've worked with their CEO for 10 years, maybe a little less, but right around 10 years. And even when he was at his last huge organization. And be careful that I don't identify. But what I saw was lots of conversation about an omelet. What we need is to look at the fact that, hey, this guy got off on the U.S. side on a tightrope and it's pointed that way and he's walking in that direction. We know where Blondin's going. And unless he falls, which is what happens every day in our funnel, they fall out. Unless he falls, he's going over there. Now, when you know that, you can get your prioritization right. And then look what happened, the illustration of trying to understand what's going on with him. You saw it so clearly when he spoke to his own manager and said, you're not going to get across here with me unless you become me. We need to stop watching and become. And then finally, once you get those two things right, it's not hard to deduce where this is going. If we don't get that right, we're in trouble. In fact, here's what most of us do. We're not following the customer. We're not becoming one with the customer. We're literally, we're looking at the wrong thing and we're trying to force the customer somewhere they don't intend to go. We're forcing language on them that isn't language they appreciate or understand. And then we wonder why they fall. And when they fall, we fall. And it's a loss. So my point for you today is think about how you and I can do a much deeper job of identifying with the customer and start by just ignoring 90% of your metrics. Did you hear me? Ignore them. You don't need them. I see people in analysis paralysis everywhere I go. I went into a key meeting not long ago and I'm listening. They need this data, they need that, they need this data. I think, what do you need data for? The page is terrible. Here's the problem. Fix the problem. Changes will happen. People will come in. You can see what's wrong from the front, not from the back. You can take the heuristic, C equals 4m plus 3v plus 2i minus f minus 2a, the conversion heuristic, apply it to the page and see, my God, this isn't going to work. I didn't need to see the data for that postcard to know that that postcard could be improved. Do I want data? You bet I do. But I'm not going to be overwhelmed by data. I'm not going to drown in it. I'm going to prioritize what I focus on and not let people bury me in the data arguments. Because data becomes an excuse. There's never enough data if you don't get inside of their head and become one of them. You can't stay out here in the data. You can't watch from a distance. You got to become them. And then once you're inside of them, infer your way forward. All right. David Fogel, I know that's right, what you just said. David's fixing that. David Carrier's fixing that. But anyway, let's keep going. All right. Let's pull up a live op. Is this helping you, audience? Give me some thoughts. Talk to me for a second. And as you do, I'm going to take you to somebody else's page and we're going to apply what we've been learning. Austin's pulling them up right now. Jao, thank you. Stan, thank you. Shannon, I'm watching now because Austin's pulling up the URLs. Scott, good. Brett, good. I want to make sure that, trying to find the balance between new material and not wearing you out with the same concepts. And I'm always looking for ways to simplify the process. And let's keep going. All right, so somebody submitted this page. You have one up for us now? All right, so let's pull it up. Here it is. All right, so that's the first thing that comes up. The entire page is blocked. And then while I'm trying to make a decision about that page, you literally stack another piece of friction on top of the other. Now let's just pause. Can you and then you want me to chat with you. About what? Can't even see the site. Let's just hold it, all right? I know this is university, and I'm not trying to be mean. I want to help them. And we didn't pick this. I didn't know what site was coming up. This is the first time I've seen this page. But how many of you let's just take for a moment one of these principles. We have no data. How many of you think we need data to fix this page? How many think that we need data to get a higher response rate? We don't. I can tell you what the data says before I see it in a situation like this. Once I get to a certain complexity, I need the data to sort it out. But this becomes clear right away. And it's very easy. In fact, if I employ the marketer's primary skill, it's empathy, right? And so I use empathy and identify. I need to see the page. If I employ empathy, and let's go full screen on it if we could, Clef. If I employ empathy and become a customer and not the marketer, can you all feel the frustration it is to try to see the site, have the entire page blocked by a pop-up, being asked to subscribe to our newsletter? So here's what that begins with. Do something that we want you to do. It's our newsletter, and we want you to subscribe. So you start by giving me a job to do, and then it's your newsletter, and then you have the audacity to think valuable is important to me, that modifier. Remember we sentence diagrammed before to learn how to get a headliner? Valuable insights delivered by email. What the hell is valuable insights? Valuable to who? Why is it valuable? I don't know the answer to that, because then you talk to me about joining your community. I didn't want to join your community. I wanted to find some information out about your university. Join our community of health and wellness professionals that receive our blog articles, guides, and resources custom tailored for your industry. And then another big button to subscribe. Can everybody, just through the principle of identification, deduce what may be going on in the mind of someone here? And then on top of that, as I'm trying to sort that out, and I have just begun on that, can you all see there's no address of friction? I don't understand what's going to happen when I subscribe. You didn't ask for an email address. Am I going to go off site? In fact, I can't see because it's blocked by another pop-up. Is there something down below? Must not be, because the button's above, but I click on the button and where do I go? Is it on the page I was just on? It can't be. Is it on a new page? Does this page change? I came to find information and you are getting in the way, but that's not enough. If I'm not annoyed by that, you stack another one on top of me. How to start a private practice as a registered dietitian. What if I'm not a registered dietitian? Why am I even putting it in front of me? And if I am a registered dietitian, how would I be interested in that event when I don't know anything, can't see anything, and by the way, you just basically spammed me in my face. You threw lots of meaningless information at me and told me stuff you wanted me to do. Now, I'm not against a pop-up executed properly. We use them. But that's not right. And let's take it one step further, because I talked about this. What did we talk about in the graphic on the control on the bank account? What's the secret sauce for conversion on this big giant pop-up that gets in the way? A smiling face. Yes. A smiling face. By the way, well, this is submitted by a student. I want to help the student. The reason I get so harsh when I do optimization is not to beat you up. I felt bad last week. We talked about a site, and we had one of the user was on. He was very gracious, sent me a note, thanked me, told me it was right. But I'm not trying to be hard on him, nor am I on this person. But I'm doing identification. I am using empathy to become a customer. And when I become a customer and I look at this, it's not just bad. It's infuriating. That's this stacked on top of this. And then what do we have next? A chat feature jumping up and getting in our way. All you keep asking me to do is what you want me to do, but you're not giving me one damn thing in exchange. So, we could go on here, but let's just take another moment. Close the pop-ups. Austin. So Austin's driving. All right. Now you marketers, tell me what to do with this. All right. Here's the good news. We got another smiling face. All right. Somebody tell me, you do the work now. I'm tired. I've been teaching for 45 minutes. I've been talking to you guys for 6 months I've been doing this 25 years, but I don't know how long you've been listening to me on YouTube. It's only been, who knows. Just tell me how to fix this. Tell the marketer how to fix this. I'm watching. It's a title, not a headline. Yes. Technology vendors are selling us engagement tools that chase people away, says Stephen. That's true. Dave Fogel offers the optimization comment of the day. 4 letters. Yuck. Now, back up for a second. Back up for a second. Stay full screen for now. I need more than that. Come on, guys. Fix this page. Let's help the marketer. So we need more than a title. That's what I've seen. All right. Yakov says some benefits. I'm watching. Can't even see the navigation. No, you can't. That's right. The navigation is white over an image, and it's really hard to see. Thank you. That's wrong. False bottom. It looks like the page is over. That's right. Good point. No subheadline. Excellent. That's right. Learn about our services. What's wrong with that button? Let's just focus on the button for a second. What do you think is the biggest problem with that button? Somebody tell me. I love the little squiggly thing. Actually, I could use that little squiggly in a really good way if I had something to emphasize, but there's nothing to emphasize there. Some value proposition needs an objective to capture attention, us, not you. All of that's true, but let's look at the button and talk about it right this. Why the heck? I'm going to start to become a little harsh again, but why did I come to the site? To learn about whatever you do. So why are you asking me to click a button again to learn about whatever you do? What is the point of that? That's why I already clicked. It's like asking me to click, and then I click, and you ask me to click, and then I click, and you ask me to click, and then I click. It's like, what's the point? I should be learning about your services now on that page. Does it scroll down? It's a big page I can see now. But remember, people don't see a lot of that. Improving the health of your practice. Uh-oh. What do we see there on that first word? Somebody tell me what that first word has to do with our second case study of the day. It's another ing. That's right, Dave. And improving, what does that mean? And just like specializing, vague. And it has no forward momentum. There's no meaningful subject predicate. And it doesn't tell me anything. Of course. And then underneath it, what I have, another title telling me nothing, helping you help others. The Business Clinic. Good gracious now. I've invested, I survived 2 pop-ups and a chat attack. And then after I got those out of the way, I looked at the top of the page, which looked like the whole page, and learned nothing. So somehow I'm super motivated because I scrolled down, and when I saw the next words, it told me improving the health of your practice. I still know nothing. And then you don't say anything to me. You stick another title in front of me, The Business Clinic, helping you help others. I have no idea what it means. I don't know if that's clickable. Is that a video? Oh, it is a video. Is that a video? Even worse. I'm not ready for a video. I know nothing yet. Scroll down. Business and Marketing Consulting for Health and Wellness in Edmonton. Look at this. All the way down, and there's still no headline. Business and Marketing Consulting for Health and Wellness in Edmonton. How are you going to help me with my business when your business is doing that bad talking to me? Business and Marketing Consulting for Health and Wellness in Edmonton is not a statement. There's no forward momentum. If you're new to this, look at our YouTube piece and learn from that on writing headlines. Now you tell me to learn about your clients and marketplace. I can do that in 1,000 places. Grow your practice with new patients. What does that mean? I can do that when I start an AdWords account. That can apply to 51 websites, 51,000 websites. Retain your clients and earn more. Where is the stuff you do for me? All you've done is talk at me. You have not talked to me. And that's the primary problem with the entire page. All right. Now, if you submitted this page and you wanted help and I just really upset you, I've been thinking, am I being too mean? But I don't know how to do this job if I don't become the customer. And I'm so frustrated with a rotten experience on the internet. Even Google's search engine is terrible. I know Google, don't get mad at me. I spoke at their headquarters and I've taught at Google and I'm liking them less and less every day. not happy about what happened with their healthcare grab, but more importantly, we settle for such low standards on the internet. Even search engines are terrible. You know, I go to Google now and I can't tell which thing is an ad and which thing isn't, and they don't want me to tell. Used to, there was one little key identified ad at the top and then there was useful search results. Now I have to figure out when I got a real result and when I got a paid for result. I can't even tell the difference. You're setting yourself up. Somebody comes along with a better way and you'll be Yahoo Google. Anyway, I'm out of time. I don't know if I'm helping people and making enemies. I'm not trying to. You know what's happening, guys? I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm 54 years of age. Marketing is a beautiful, glorious thing that can transform lives, can change the world. It's a martial skill. It's an elegant force. And when you line yourself up behind the right cause and you use true, authentic marketing, it's a power that can change lives. But instead, I see this stuff. That was I thought that was a college I was looking at. I'm not sure still if it was a college or not. I thought it was University of Calgary or something. I thought I saw that, but I was confused. I mean, if you're teaching you're the ones doing the teaching. You got to get this right. And we got to set the standard higher. We got to set the bar higher. We got to go for more. We got to stop settling for a thankless job, meaningless work, ridiculous deadlines, and pathetic copy. But when we really break through, when we when we can get a holistic picture of marketing and really break through, listen to me, everybody in the world will want you because you can change things when you can do that. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks for putting up with me. I appreciate you. I'll see you next week.